when I think about Thursday nights, I feel like whether you realize it or not, we're drawn together on Thursday nights to talk about the tough stuff because Thursday nights, the team building call is really about creating leverage, building a team, becoming the leader of a team. Historically, we're here to train the next generation of leaders, which means that I get to kind of peel back and talk a little bit more honestly, openly, tough stuff with the folks that show up on a Thursday night. So even if you're brand new, it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter where you're from or what your background is. Part of the Legal Shield business model is leadership development. During the coaching call today, I talked about how we got that during the acquisition. Before I came to the company, we had an acquisition where Harlan Stonecipher acquired a company called the People's Network. In that acquisition, he got the CEO of the People's Network, the gentleman that wrote The Slight Edge. He got Eric Worre. He got Brian Carruthers, Darnell Self, and all these other incredible leaders, but leadership developers. And so tonight, let's celebrate that this is a leadership development opportunity for all of us. And let's talk about stuff. Let me start by asking you to do something totally uncomfortable. I want you to look at the biggest obstacle in your business right now. I don't know what it is. But you do. And you don't have to put it in the chat. That's not what I'm saying. But in your notes, I want you to put together this tough stuff. Right? What is the biggest thing? Maybe it's a no from a friend you really respected and that hurt. I've been there. We've all been there. Maybe it's a team member who said they were serious, who lasted a day and quit. Maybe like last week we were talking about the well, the kind of the analogy of pumping a water well. Maybe you've been pumping that well and you feel like you've done it long enough, but you haven't seen the water yet. I want you to look at that hard thing, whatever it is for you tonight. I want you to look at that when we're done tonight. And I want you to say, thank you. I want you to have gratitude for that hard thing. And here's why. Most of the world is running away from the hard stuff. They are looking for the shortcut. They're looking for the life hack. They're looking for the version of success that doesn't require them to change who they are. But on Thursday nights, I want us to be able to talk about a different path. I want us to talk about the hard, the alchemy of the hard. What's alchemy? It's an ancient process of taking something common like lead and turning it into something precious like gold. In this business, the lead is the rejection, the frustration, the struggle. So what's the gold? It's the freedom. And it's the struggle. The gold is the freedom. It's the sovereignty on the other side of your frustration. But you can't have the gold without the challenge. Some of you, and I blame you, for the rest of the group can blame you, but some of you really like it when I weave in a history story. Some of you know that I'm a nerd for history, especially US history. And then some of you say, hey, listen, I learned something every week about US history I didn't know before, or a famous sports, an Olympian I didn't know before, or a swimmer, or an athlete, or someone that was alive long before I was alive and I didn't know before. And for those people, it's your fault that we're going to talk about the Brooklyn Bridge tonight. For you, we're going back to New York City, 1869. Brooklyn and Manhattan were two separate worlds. And the only way to get across the East River was by ferry. When the river froze, New York essentially just dried up and died. People were trapped. The economy stopped. It was a problem that needed a solution. And there was a man, his name was John Roebling. He had a vision for what would be the Brooklyn Bridge. It'd be the greatest suspension bridge in human history. But before they could build the towers that would touch the clouds, they had to go deep into the mud. Now, it didn't, while it was a great vision for John Roebling, it was his son, many of you know this, Washington Roebling, that actually did the project. And it's really his story we're going to focus on. John Roebling, unfortunately, died in a freak accident. But his son, Washington, knew that the bridge is only as strong as what it stands on. So he built these massive wooden boxes called caissons. A caisson for the Brooklyn Bridge, they were the size of half a city block, sunk to the bottom of the East River. And then men were sent inside of these boxes to dig. Imagine one of these boxes, dark. The air was so thick it was hard to breathe. The men were working in a foot of mud, clearing out the silt and the slime for one thing. They were digging for the bedrock. They knew that if they built the bridge on the mud, the first storm was going to take it down. So they had to dig. They had to go through the hard until they hit the rock that doesn't move, the bedrock. Let's go back to our business, folks. Your no's, the people telling you no today, that's the mud. Your frustration about the business not being where you want it to be, that's the silt. When you're prospecting, when you're sharing a video, when you're involved in the three-way calls, you're digging through the mud of other people's opinions. You're digging through the mud of your own self-doubt, and most people quit when they're right there, still in the mud. They say to me, Jim, this is hard, it's messy, it's dark, there's no bridge yet. Of course not, because it's the building phase. You're still in the middle of the beginning. You're still in the caisson digging. But my hope is that when we come out of Thursday evenings, we become a group of people who knows that it's hard. That the hard of the mud is what prepares you for the height of the tower. That we aren't looking for easy people. You're looking for bedrock people. I consult, sometimes people call me from other teams, and I'll spend time with them like I will with my own associates when I can. Now, don't everybody call me tomorrow, but I spent 45 minutes with a lady yesterday, and the problem was she wasn't looking for the people that were going to stay with her, and she was frustrated by how quickly they'd come and go. And I said, listen, you're tough. You've been here for 14 years. You're serious. You believe in Harlan Stonecipher's vision. Why would you settle for anything less from the people that you're prospecting? So tonight, don't look for the easy people. Look for the bedrock people. We have in this book, I got a pack still from our convention is this year's. But this is last year's book. I know that I got to get this year's out, but I always think about it when I'm in one of these Zooms. This book has 350 people that have become a millionaire in this business. You're looking for the next people that are like these 350 who decided they were willing to stay in the mud until they found the truth. So let's go back to John Roebling's son, Washington. So I don't run out of time and so I don't bore you with history, but hopefully the history of the Brooklyn Bridge will anchor with you and you'll remember the lesson of today. Washington Roebling himself, he didn't just send people into those caissons to dig. He spent so much time in those boxes that he developed what they called it at the time caisson disease. What we know from deep water divers today as the bends. It paralyzed him. He was trapped in a chair in a room in Brooklyn. He couldn't even walk to the construction site. Think about your hard again. Is it harder than being paralyzed while you're trying to build the world's greatest bridge? Finish what your father started? He sat by his window with a pair of binoculars and watched the towers of this bridge rise. He couldn't move his legs, but his vision was walking across that bridge every single day. Tonight, John Fehrenbach talked about our book of the month, Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt. In that book, he says, the hardest part of a sale is the part where you have to manage your own emotions. Washington Roebling had to manage the emotions of being a prisoner in his own body while building a monument. So tonight, let's think about stop being a prisoner of our circumstances, stop being a prisoner of the next potential no, because the hard is the tuition that you and I pay to become the person who can handle the freedom. The hard is the tuition you pay to become the person who can handle the freedom. I didn't understand that when I had 2 minimum wage jobs and still couldn't pay my bills. I wanted this to be easy. What I didn't understand was I was being transformed. You are being transformed. You are being forged. You are being made into a leader who can stand on the bedrock of your own character. And that matters because what you do in this business when nobody's looking will define you. If you want the life that 99% of people don't have, you have got to be willing to do the digging that 99% of people won't do. We don't ask for the mud to go away. We ask for the strength to keep digging until we hit the rock. Back to Washington Roebling, sitting at his window, paralyzed. The heart had claimed his body, but it couldn't touch his purpose. But here's the problem. A bridge cannot be built by a man who can't talk to his workers. The cables weren't being spun. The stones weren't being laid. The project was dying on the vine. And that's when the miracle of the messenger happened. Washington's wife, Emily. Now, Emily didn't know a thing about civil engineering. She wasn't a builder. She wasn't a mathematician, but she loved her husband. And she believed in his vision. Every day for years, Emily became the bridge for the bridge. She would sit by Washington's bed, learn the complex instructions that he would communicate by tapping his finger, and then she would walk across that river and deliver the message to the foreman. Think about our business. She was the invite. She was the three-way call. She was the one sharing the video before videos existed, of course. People look at the Brooklyn Bridge today, they see stone and they see steel, but think about this, the bridge is held together by the persistence of a messenger. And let's go back to that 350 Millionaire Club members. That's 350 families whose lives were permanently altered. 350 legacies built on bedrock. But go deeper than the money. The money gets people's attention, but every single one of those 350 Millionaire Club members, every single one was recruited into this business by somebody. Think about that person. The person who sent the link. The person that invited them to the event. The person who said, I don't know if this is for you, but you need to see it. Don't you think that person was scared that they were paralyzed by their own fear of rejection? Maybe they felt like they didn't know enough to explain the business, but they did what Emily Roebling did. They delivered the message anyway. If I get nothing else to say to you, I've got to say to you as often as I can, you are sitting on a gold mine of opportunity. When you share a video, you're not bothering someone. You're offering them a chance at entrepreneurship. You're giving them the ability to free themselves. There is a Millionaire Club member currently trapped in a cubicle right now. Their future could be the Millionaires Club. They're praying for a way out. They're looking at their bank account. They're looking at their kids, and they are crying in the night for a bridge to a better life. Let's go back to Jeb Blunt. What does he say? He says the most important conversation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself right before you pick up the phone. What are you telling yourself? Are you telling yourself that you're bothering somebody? Or are you telling yourself that you're the Emily Roebling of their life? That you're the only one who can deliver the message that will lead them to freedom? You know, Emily ended up learning so much about the bridge that the workers thought she was the chief engineer. She didn't start as an expert. She became one because she refused to let the hard stop the message. Tonight, I want you to see your sharing of our opportunity as a life-changing tool. You don't have to be the one who built the company. You don't have to be the one who designed our most recent legal plans. You just have to be the messenger. One video, one link, one invitation. That simple act is the seed of $1 million story. And I don't have to say, I think so, because those 350 families are the proof of that. And the next ones are right there now waiting for you to find the courage to hit send. If Emily Washington could carry the weight of the Brooklyn Bridge on her shoulders for a decade just to deliver a message, surely you and I can handle a no from someone who doesn't understand our vision. Because we're not in the business of convincing. We're in the business of connecting. We're building bridges between where people are and where they want to be. The Brooklyn Bridge took 14 years to build, 14 years of mud, 14 years of paralysis, 14 years of Emily walking that message across the river. But finally, in 1883, the day arrived. The moment happened. The bridge was open. See the difference between May 23rd and May 24th of that year? On the 23rd, if you wanted to go to Manhattan, you were a slave to the ferry schedule. You were a slave to the weather. You were a slave to the ice. You had no choice. But on the 24th, you had sovereignty. You could walk, you could ride, you could go whenever you wanted. The bridge had turned a hard journey into a simple one. So let's talk about why we're really here. It's not just about the commissions. It's not just about the rings. We're here for the sovereignty of choice. Most people in our world are living in a time prison. They wake up to an alarm clock they hate, drive in traffic they despise, sit in a cubicle they didn't choose, working for a boss that doesn't even know their children's names, and they think they're free because they have a paycheck. But they have no choice. Tony Robbins reminds us that the quality of our life is the quality of our choices. What does Legal Shield do? It becomes the bridge to take you from having to getting to. Think about what your life looks like when the bridge is finished. It's the choice to be where you want to be because you want to be there, not because a company sent you there. It's the choice to take a day off, to go to the science fair without asking for permission. Jim Rohn would say, wages make you a living, but profits make you a fortune. In this business, profits are the overrides. Profits are the residual income. That's the steel cable that holds up your bridge. And when you develop a team of leaders protecting families, you're no longer trading your life for $1. You've created a system of freedom. Washington Roebling never walked across that bridge on opening day. He watched from his window. But in his recounts, he didn't feel like a victim. He felt like a king. Why? Because he knew for the next 100 years, millions of people would find their own freedom because he was willing to stay long enough to build that bridge. What is your why tonight? Is it just to pay a bill? That's okay. But it's Thursday night. Maybe it's to build a bridge so strong that your grandchildren will walk across it. We're building a life where price is never the deciding factor. A life where time is our most valuable currency. But you have to be willing to lay the cables. You have to be willing to be the architect of your sovereignty. And as Jeb Blunt says in the book, the more you prospect, the more choices you have. If you only have one prospect, you have no choice. You're desperate. If you have 100 prospects, you have power. If you have 1,000, you have freedom. Tonight, I want you to stop looking at your next call as work. Look at them as the steel strands of the cable. Every invite is another strand. Every recruit is another wire. Eventually, those wires become a cable so thick that nothing in this world can break your freedom. Because freedom isn't the ability to do nothing. It's the ability to do everything that matters to you when it matters to you with the people that matter to you. That's the reward for digging in the mud. That's the reward for the work. That's the reward for being an agent of change in other people's lives. Let me tell you a quick story, one you've probably heard before, and then we'll get out of here. But this story has haunted me since the first time I ever heard it. And I heard it at a financial freedom boot camp. It's the story of a butterfly. A man was sitting in his garden, as the story goes, one afternoon when he noticed a cocoon attached to a leaf. He saw a tiny opening appear, and he sat there for hours watching a butterfly struggle to force its body through that tiny hole. The butterfly seemed to be making no progress. It looked stuck. It looked like it was in pain. It looked like it had reached the limits of its strength. In the story, this man, in his kindness, decided to help. He thought he was doing the butterfly a favor. So he took a pair of small scissors and gently snipped the remaining bit of the cocoon. The butterfly emerged easily, but something was wrong. The butterfly had a swollen body, tiny shriveled wings, and the man sat there waiting for the wings to expand, waiting for the butterfly to take flight and join the others in the garden, but it never happened. The butterfly instead spent the rest of its short life crawling around with a heavy body and useless wings, and it was never able to fly. See, what that man in his kindness didn't understand was that the struggle was a biological necessity. The restriction of the cocoon and the intense effort required to get through that tiny opening is nature's way of forcing the fluid from the butterfly's body into its wings. Without the resistance, the wings never get the strength that they need. Without the hard, the butterfly can never fly. Folks, your rejections, your no's are your resistance. The prospect that makes you feel small is the tiny opening of your cocoon. The months where you feel like you're digging through granite are the very moments where the leadership fluid is being forced into your wings. This is a tough thing to grab, but I understand it today and I want you to understand it. If I gave you $1 million tomorrow, but I didn't give you the character that comes from the struggle, you would be just like that butterfly. You'd have the body of a millionaire, but the wings of a person who can't handle the pressure. You would lose it all because you never earned the strength to carry it. Washington Roebling needed those 14 years. Emily Roebling needed those walks across the river. They needed the resistance of the engineers who doubted them, the politicians who tried to pull their funding. That resistance is what turned them into giants. Back to fanatical prospecting, Jeb Blunt says the hardest walk you will ever take is the one where you are walking alone towards your goals, but you aren't walking alone. You're walking against the wind so that you can develop the power to lift off. Stop asking for the scissors. Stop asking for the easy. Every time you face a challenge in this business and you stay in the fight, your wings are getting stronger. Every time you get back on the phone after something doesn't go your way, you're forcing success fluid into your future. The freedom of the Millionaires Club is a high altitude life. You cannot live at that altitude with weak wings. Enjoy being in the cocoon right now. Love the pressure you feel. That is just greatness getting ready to take flight. Folks, I'm out of time, but we've traveled from the mud of the East River to the heights of the Millionaires Club. Hopefully we've learned tonight that hard is a gift, that being the messenger is being the miracle, and that the resistance is the only way to earn your wings. But let's bring it all home. When you close this Zoom, the world is going to look exactly like it did an hour ago. Folks, the economy hasn't changed while we've been on this Zoom tonight. The people who say no haven't changed. The mountain in front of you has not moved. But if this was time well spent, you have changed. You now know that you're the architect of your own sovereignty. That you're the Emily Roebling carrying a message of freedom across a river of doubt. I want you to think about that next person you're going to contact. I want you to think about the next person you're going to share a video with. Somewhere out there right now, there is a man who is tired of being a prisoner of his paycheck. There is a mother who is praying for a way to stay home with her kids without losing her dignity. There is a future Millionaire Club member who is currently trapped in a caisson of debt and despair. They don't need you to be perfect. They don't need you to be a genius civil engineer. They just need you to be the messenger. Jeb Blunt says the most important conversation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself right before you pick up the phone. So tonight, tell yourself the truth. Your yes is someone else's miracle. When you share our video, you aren't just sending a link, you are driving a golden spike into the ground of somebody else's future. We are building a bridge that will outlast us. And the proof of that is we continue on behalf of the pioneers that are no longer walking this road with us because they built a system of freedom that allows us to protect families long after we're no longer here. 350 families have walked across that bridge to become Millionaire Club members. 350 families have found their sovereignty, and every single one of them is there because someone just like you decided that hard was worth it. Don't ask for it to be easier. Ask to be stronger. Don't look for the scissors, look for the struggle. Because on the other side of that struggle is a life of total choice. On the other side of that hard is the sunsets you've been dreaming about, the peace that you've been seeking, and the sovereignty of owning every second of your time. So go out there tonight. We're done. Find your bedrock, deliver the message, and let's show the world what happens when a group of committed people decide that the bridge is going up no matter how deep the mud. Because, ladies and gentlemen, what you do matters. And it is important, noble work. And I'm incredibly grateful that I get to do it with all of you. Good night, everybody.